I'm going to tell you a story of the rabbit that was killed by a wolf this morning. When the rabbit came out of his burrow this morning, he noticed the smell of wolf around his door. He looked around, and sure enough, here came the wolf loping up the hillside. The rabbit got his family, his wife, and his kids safely into the door of his burrow, where they watched as he took a deep breath and took off running right between the legs of the wolf. In a very short period of time, the chase was over, the rabbit was dead, and the wolf loped back to his pack, his bloody mouth full of the tale of his conquest. When the rabbit awakens in the presence of his ancestors, he's greeted by the sound of soft paws clapping together. With his chest poked out with pride, he regales his forebearers with the thrilling tale of how he outran that wolf for 5 minutes. With his special moves, he juked and jived, how he zigged and zagged, how he stopped trembling right under the wolf's nose until at the very last minute, in the nick of time, with a great leap forward, he led that wolf on and on, heart pounding, ears laid back, breath rasping, on and on until he reached his final triumph. Just as he was about to make his final maneuver, the hot, slavering jaws of the wolf caught him in mid-leap. His ancestors nodded with approval. They said, "You did well. You led the enemy away from your mate and your kids, your generations. Maybe one of your sons or daughters will lead that wolf right over the cliff next time." I'm a visual artist. For over 20 years, I have sewn together tiny pieces of fabric to tell visual stories. I refer to my work as cloth paintings to differentiate it from the quilt that your grandmother made for your bed, and because I designed them with the same compositional skills that traditional painters use: line, color, pattern, and perspective. In art, the word perspective refers to placing multiple objects on a flat plane in order to give the illusion of space. In history, it refers to a point of view. In my practice, my point of view on the history of the United States is that of the unseen, the unwanted, and the disadvantaged. The work that I'm going to share with you today is made of fabric, and it is based on the history of the United States. I'm uninterested in the story of the wolves. I'm more interested in the people that history happened to, the survivors, the victims, from the rabbit's perspective. This is the Middle Passage. The Middle Passage refers to a triangular trade route that took manufactured goods from Europe to Africa, recently enslaved Africans to the Americas and the West Indies to work the plantations there. Natural resources from those plantations back to Europe. From 1519 until the middle of the 19th century, millions of Africans, men, women, and children made the 3-week to 3-month journey in cramped, overcrowded wooden sailing ships, unable to communicate with each other and unable to communicate with their captors who were British, French, Dutch, Portuguese, and Spanish. Perspective. This is 6 Feet of Water, Evangeline, Louisiana, 1927. When the Mississippi River flooded in 1927, 700,000 Americans became homeless in Mississippi, Arkansas, and Louisiana. At that time, it was the largest natural disaster in the country's history. 62 years after the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed, 90% of Black Americans still resided in the South. Many of them lived on plantations, either as tenant farmers or as sharecroppers. In the aftermath of the flood, since everything had been washed away, many of the blacks were coerced into unpaid labor. In Mississippi specifically, thousands of black men were arrested, held in pens, until a white planter or businessman came along needing their help to restore their farms and businesses. These men endured that humiliation because the only choice was starvation for themselves and their families. Perspective. This is Bad Blood, Tuskegee Syphilis Experiments, 1932 to 1972. For 40 years, the United States Public Health Service, in conjunction with the Centers for Disease Control, conducted the Tuskegee study of unrelated syphilis in the Negro male. They wanted to know if the natural progression of this blinding, crippling, deadly disease was the same in black men as it was in whites. 623 black farmers from Macon County, Alabama, were their test subjects without their informed consent. They were not told that the disease was transmitted sexually. They were simply told they had bad blood. They were not given any medication for their disease, even when penicillin became widely available in the 1940s. For their participation, the farmers and their families were given free food, free medical services, and free burial insurance. Perspective. History that we're familiar with is being taught from a Eurocentric male perspective. Much of it is simply revisionist myth, stories told long after the event actually happened, sometimes as a teaching tool for small children, and sometimes for less benign reasons. New history is being discovered. Old history is being updated and corrected. Current history, the history that we are living right now, my great-grandchildren's future history, is being changed as we speak to benefit the perspectives of some who want more power. This is voting rights. What's next? March of 2021, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp and his Republican-led legislature passed the Election Integrity Act to deal with fraudulent election issues. The act made it more difficult for some Georgians to vote. The act made it criminal for free food, free water, and free potty breaks to be offered to citizens who were standing in long election lines. These young people are simply trying to do their part until they're old enough to cast their own ballots. This is Leaving Alabama. In June of 2022, the United States Supreme Court reversed Roe versus Wade, making a woman's right to determine her reproductive health illegal again. The dissenting justices said that after 50 years, millions of young American women no longer have the right of personal privacy or physical autonomy like their mothers and grandmothers had. The philosopher George Santayana said, "Those who don't know their history are bound to repeat it." I say that if we don't learn from the mistakes of our fathers and their fathers and their fathers, like the rabbit's children learned from him, all of recorded history has been a waste of time. Thank you very much for listening.